You've met them before, maybe in a boardroom, maybe in a classroom, maybe at a family gathering where one person somehow turns every conversation into a mirror, reflecting back to themselves. They walk in, and the air changes. It's not just that they speak louder, it's that they speak like the world has been waiting for them to start talking. They don't just hold the floor, they own it, like the spotlight was designed to find them no matter where they stand. At first you're drawn in, you feel it in your chest, that little pull toward their energy. They seem so sure of themselves, so decisive, so unshakable. And if you're honest with yourself, part of you envies it, because when was the last time you walked into a room without second-guessing your every move? But then the cracks start to show. A harmless story becomes an exaggerated drama, always with them as the hero or the victim. A casual disagreement suddenly feels like a personal betrayal, and when the room needs a moment of silence, they fill it with noise, not because it's needed, but because they can't stand not being the center. You start to notice the pattern. The praise they give is never unconditional. The relationships they keep are rarely deep. They're strategic. They have a way of turning allies into pawns and competition into enemies before anyone even realizes the game has begun. And yet, they rise, they get promoted, they're celebrated. Sometimes they're even elected. And you're left wondering how someone so obviously self-serving keeps being rewarded in systems that claim to value integrity. The answer is unsettling, because it's not just about them, it's about us. Psychologists call it the halo effect. Our tendency to let one positive trait we notice about someone overshadow everything else. If they seem confident, we assume they must also be competent. If they're articulate, we assume they must also be honest. This effect is even stronger when the world feels uncertain. In times of chaos, our brains look for anchors, something or someone that appears stable, and nothing looks more stable than someone who believes their own story completely. Max Weber called this charismatic authority, a form of power built not on law or tradition, but on the almost magical belief in a leader's personal qualities. It's the same force that can inspire revolutions, or destroy them. Picture Rome in 49 BC. The Republic is on edge. Political factions tear at each other in the Senate. The people are restless, food is scarce, and then Julius Caesar, already a war hero, does something unthinkable. He marches his army across the Rubicon River, an act of treason, declaring war on the Senate itself. The law said he was a criminal. The tradition said he was betraying the Republic. But the people? They cheered. They didn't ask whether his actions were just. They saw a man who looked certain when everyone else looked weak. That's the dangerous pull. When someone stands before us with unwavering certainty, we can mistake it for strength, for truth, for destiny. We stop asking, is this right? And start asking, will this make us feel safe again? And maybe, if we're being brutally honest, part of us likes people like this because they carry the weight of decisiveness for us. We live in a world where we second-guess what to eat for breakfast, where we scroll endlessly through choices but can't make a decision, where our own voices feel small in the noise. Then here comes someone who never hesitates, someone who doesn't flinch under criticism, someone who tells us they know exactly where we should go. It's tempting, it's seductive, and it's exactly why they rise. If you look back at your own life, at the leaders, bosses, or even friends you followed, ask yourself, were they the best person for the role, or just the person who made it easiest to stop thinking for yourself? Because the rise of the narcissist doesn't begin in the palace or the corner office. It begins in moments like that. In our quiet willingness to trade complexity for clarity, truth for certainty, and autonomy for the comfort of being led. Psychologists have found that in moments of uncertainty, humans instinctively look for confidence, not competence. We don't ask, is this person right? We ask, do they seem sure of themselves? That's the trap. Narcissists are masters at appearing certain. They don't hesitate. They don't self-doubt in public. And they never reveal uncertainty unless it's to manipulate sympathy. In a world where most of us stumble over our words and question our worth, their unshakable self-belief feels magnetic. Plato warned about this in the Republic, the danger of confusing the appearance of wisdom for the reality of it. A skilled pretender can rule the crowd far more easily than the quiet thinker who actually understands the truth. To a narcissist, leadership is not a responsibility. It's a stage. They aren't there to serve, they're there to perform. And the performance is always the same. Control the narrative, dominate the room, and position themselves as the indispensable center of every solution. Machiavelli wrote that a ruler must appear virtuous, even if he is not. A narcissist takes that lesson and supercharges it. They appear compassionate when they need loyalty. They appear decisive when they need obedience, and they will gladly sacrifice truth if it wins them applause. Here's the bitter truth. Narcissists rise partly because those who could challenge them don't. Good leaders often hesitate. They wrestle with doubts, weigh the moral cost of decisions, and refuse to manipulate the truth to win. And while they pause to think, the narcissist is already 3 moves ahead, seizing the opportunity. Dietrich Bonhoeffer warned that evil often advances not because it is stronger, but because the good are slower, more cautious, more willing to wait for the right moment to act. In the space between hesitation and action, the narcissist builds their throne. It's easy to think of the narcissist as the villain and the crowd as their victim. But history tells us a more unsettling truth. The crowd often helps the narcissist rise. We want someone to carry our fears, to speak with the certainty we lack, to promise simple solutions to complex problems. And when someone stands before us with that confidence, even if it's hollow, we're tempted to hand them the keys to power. Nietzsche saw this in the way people gravitate towards strong personalities, mistaking domination for strength and compliance for unity. The narcissist doesn't just rise because of their own ambition. They rise because we lift them up. Once in power, the narcissist's true nature reveals itself in cycles. First comes the charm, winning loyalty. Then comes the control, silencing dissent. Finally comes the decay, institutions hollowed out, trust eroded, truth blurred. By the time the damage is obvious, it's often too late. The narcissist has surrounded themselves with enablers and eliminated anyone who could challenge their position. What's left is a stage with one spotlight, shining on them. So how do we stop this pattern? First, by recognizing the difference between confidence and competence. A good leader doesn't need to be the loudest voice in the room. They need to be the one willing to listen when the room is silent. Second, by confronting our own attraction to the performance. We must ask, why am I drawn to this person? Is it because they speak the truth or because they make me feel certain? And finally, by acting before it's too late, supporting leaders who may not have the showmanship of the narcissist, but have the integrity to put truth above ego. Let's put aside history for a moment. Let's put aside Rome, the Weimar Republic, corporate empires, and every grand stage where narcissists have played their parts. Let's talk about you. Because the truth is, the story of why narcissists rise isn't just out there, in politics or in boardrooms. It's in here, in the quiet decisions we make every single day. Think about the last time you chose a leader. Maybe at work, maybe in your community, maybe even among your friends. Did you choose the person who listened the most carefully? The one who asked the hard questions? The one who admitted they didn't have all the answers? Or did you choose the person who seemed sure? The one who filled the silence with easy certainty? The one who never stumbled over their words, who made every decision sound final, even when you didn't fully understand it? We don't like to admit it, but confidence, even false confidence, is intoxicating. It's a shortcut for trust. It spares us the discomfort of wrestling with uncertainty. And when life feels overwhelming, the pull toward that kind of decisiveness can be almost irresistible. The rise of a narcissist is often less about their ambition and more about the quiet bargains the rest of us make with ourselves. They're not perfect, but they get things done. At least they have a vision, even if it's a little self-serving. Better them than someone weaker. These are the phrases we whisper in the privacy of our own minds. We tell ourselves we're being pragmatic, realistic, strategic. But what we're often doing is outsourcing our moral responsibility. We hand over our judgment in exchange for the comfort of letting someone else decide. Machiavelli warned that people will forgive almost anything in a leader: cruelty, dishonesty, manipulation, if that leader makes them feel secure. And that's the part we don't want to see. Narcissists don't just seize power, we give it to them. So here's the uncomfortable question. When was the last time you rewarded narcissism? Maybe it was the charismatic manager you defended because they were good for the company, even though they crushed the people beneath them. Maybe it was the politician whose behavior you excused because you liked their policies. Maybe it was a friend you kept close, not because they were kind, but because they made you feel important just by being in their orbit. The truth is, if we're honest, most of us have done it. Not because we're weak, but because we're human, wired to seek security, belonging, and clarity, especially in uncertain times. But if we never question that instinct, we become part of the machinery that lifts narcissists higher. Here's the danger. Once a narcissist is in power, their influence spreads like a toxin in water. They reward loyalty over competence. They silence dissent through fear or flattery. They build systems that make their removal nearly impossible without breaking the entire structure. By the time we realize what's happened, the cost of removing them feels too high, and so we let them stay just a little longer. And in that time, they reshape the culture in their image. History is full of societies that woke up too late, not because the people didn't see the warning signs, but because they kept telling themselves the danger wasn't urgent yet. So here's the challenge I'm leaving you with. In the next week, pay attention to the people you admire. Watch why you trust them. Ask yourself, am I drawn to their character or just their certainty? Do they speak for themselves or for the people they claim to lead? Do they make space for questions or do they punish doubt? And then turn the question inward. When you lead, in any capacity, even in small ways, do you invite real dialogue or do you fall back on the same performance of certainty you've been conditioned to admire in others? Plato believed the best leaders were the ones who did not want to lead. Those who saw leadership not as a prize to be won, but as a responsibility to be carried. Nietzsche, on the other hand, warned that the human desire for the herd, the need to be led, makes us vulnerable to those who crave power above all else. Both were right. The tension between the leader and the led will never disappear. The question is whether we, as individuals, will break the cycle by learning to resist the easy seduction of the loudest, most confident voice in the room. Because here's the final twist. The real danger isn't just that narcissists rise to power, it's that we train ourselves day after day to follow them. You can't change history, but you can change your own patterns. You can choose to notice when confidence is just camouflage. You can choose to look past the spotlight and into the shadows. You can choose to reward humility, curiosity, and courage, even when it's quieter, slower, and less glamorous. Because every time you do, you make it just a little harder for the wrong kind of leader to rise. And maybe someday, you'll be in a position to lead. And you'll remember that leadership isn't about being the loudest voice. It's about being the truest one. The next time someone walks into a room radiating certainty, ask yourself, are they the leader I need or just the one I'm tempted to follow? And remember, history will not only judge them, it will judge us for who we choose to follow.